"Sir, I'm hungry. Can I have something to eat? One day when I'm rich, I'll pay you back." That was the first thing he said. Not hello, not excuse me, just the truth. I opened the door and found a boy standing there, maybe 9 years old, thin as a fence post. His shirt was stiff with dried sweat, hanging loose on a body that had missed too many meals. His shoes were cracked open at the sides, toes pressing against worn fabric like they were trying to escape. He kept his hands folded in front of him, polite but tense, like he was ready to run the second I shook my head. I was 50 years old, living alone on a small piece of land outside Riverside Flats, where the paved road gives up and the world forgets people. I didn't have much. No wife, no children, just a tired house and soil that fought me every year. Still, I stepped aside. "Come in," he sat at my kitchen table without leaning back, like he wasn't sure the chair was really his. I set a plate of beans and cornbread in front of him. Nothing special. He ate fast, then faster. When he noticed me watching, he stopped mid-bite. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I don't usually eat like that." "What's your name?" I asked. "Malik." That night, I gave him a blanket and a spot near the heater. I didn't ask where he came from. Boys like him didn't carry answers, just miles. By the morning, he was still there. By the third day, he stopped asking when he should leave. I never said he could stay. I just kept giving him small jobs. "Carry this. Hold that. Wait here." Winter came early. Malik got sick, fever hot enough to scare me. I sold an old tool I'd been saving and walked miles for medicine. One night, half awake and shaken, he looked at me and said something that stuck. "When I get rich, I'll pay you back in 21 years. I smiled, quiet, tired. "Life keeps better records than money," I told him. "You just focus on getting better." Malik grew with the land, learned when to speak and when not to, learned how to read the sky, the soil, and people's silences. When food ran short, he'd say he was full and leave bread behind for me. I noticed, didn't argue. People talked. Some said I was kind. Some said I was foolish. Nobody helped. When Malik turned 14, a black sedan rolled down the dirt road. A man stepped out, well-dressed, eyes heavy with regret. "I'm his grandfather," he said. Malik looked at me, fear written clear on his face. I nodded once. "Go," I said. "Don't waste a chance meant for you." He hugged me hard. "I won't forget," he said. "I promise." Then he was gone. Years passed. The land aged. So did I. Neighbors sold. Developers circled. I didn't sell. Then the eviction notice came. And today, county trucks sat in my field. Men with clipboards moved fast, avoiding my eyes. When they dragged the mattress out, my knee gave out. I hit the dirt hard, palms pressed into soil like I could hold the place together. A deputy told me to move. I couldn't. Then the sound changed. A helicopter. Dust filled the air as it landed beyond the field. A man stepped out, early 40s, black, calm, expensive shoes already dirty. His eyes scanned the scene and stopped on me. He walked over and crouched. "What's your name, sir?" "Samuel Wright," I said. He closed his eyes for a second. Then he said softly, "It's me, Malik." The boy who asked for food had kept his promise.
For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The man crouching in front of me didn't fit the memory in my head. The boy named Malik had been all elbows and hunger, eyes too big for his face. This man was solid, calm, the kind of calm that comes from knowing you don't have to raise your voice to be heard. "Malik?" I said, unsure. He nodded. "Yes, sir." Sir. That word hit harder than the helicopter blade still slowing behind him. Around us, the county workers had frozen. Clipboards hung useless in their hands. The deputy shifted his stance, suddenly uncertain which side of the law he was standing on. Malik stood and looked around slowly, taking everything in. The trucks, the boxes on the ground, the cracked picture frame half buried in dirt. His jaw tightened, not with anger, but with something colder. "What's happening here?" he asked. The inspector cleared his throat. "This property is under county enforcement for multiple violations. We're executing a lawful eviction." Malik turned to him. Just turned. Didn't step closer. Didn't raise his voice. "Whose order?" he asked. The inspector hesitated, gave a name. Malik nodded once, like he was filing it away. He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket. "Hold everything," he said. "Not a request, a statement." The inspector bristled. "You don't have authority." Malik raised one finger. And somehow that was enough. He made a call, put it on speaker. "I need the compliance files tied to parcel C19, now." The line went quiet, then sending. While we waited, Malik came back to me and crouched again, this time closer. "Are you hurt?" I said. "My pride and my knee." A corner of his mouth twitched. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." "You came when it mattered," I said, "and I meant it." His phone buzzed. He stood, scrolled, eyes moving fast. "These inspection signatures are copied," he said aloud. "These dates overlap county closures. And this zoning change?" He turned the screen toward the deputy. "It was never approved." The deputy's face changed. Not fear, calculation. The inspector's voice cracked. "There must be some mistake." "There is," Malik said, "and it's criminal." He made another call, then another. Names were said quietly. State oversight, independent auditors, an injunction filed in real time. Words that don't mean much until they suddenly mean everything. The deputy cleared his throat. "Sir, we're suspending enforcement pending review." Malik nodded. "Good." The trucks shut down one by one. Engines died. Boxes were set back where they came from. One worker picked up the cracked photo frame and handed it to me without meeting my eyes. Neighbors edged closer. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. Someone asked who Malik was. Nobody answered. By late afternoon, the convoy was gone. The land went quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet. This one had weight. Malik stayed. We walked the field slowly. He asked where frost hit first, where water pooled, which fence posts couldn't be trusted. He remembered more than he let on. "I kept my promise," he said finally, standing near the old oak at the edge of the property. "I just didn't know how it would happen." I looked at him, really looked this time. "You did more than that," I said. "You remembered." He exhaled like he'd been holding something in for 21 years. "I didn't get rich for the money. I got rich so nobody could do this to people who don't deserve it." The sun dipped low, painting the fields gold. For the first time in a long while, the land felt like it belonged again, and somewhere deep in my chest, something unclenched.
The first auditor arrived 3 days later. Not loud, not rushed, just a woman with a camera, a notebook, and the kind of patience that makes liars nervous. She walked the land the way Malik once had as a boy, slow, observant, asking questions that didn't sound like accusations until it was too late to lie. Then another came, then another. County offices that had never returned my calls suddenly wanted meetings. Inspectors who once avoided eye contact now spoke carefully, choosing words like they might be used against them, because now they could be. Malik didn't hover. He didn't bark orders. He let the system choke on its own paperwork. Files that were supposed to line up didn't. Dates overlapped, signatures repeated, payments appeared where no payment should exist. By the end of the second week, the story started leaking. Quiet at first, a local reporter asking background questions, then a headline that didn't use names but didn't need to. County Land Enforcement under review. That was enough. The developers pulled back, fast. Contracts dissolved by mutual agreement. One executive resigned for personal reasons. Another left town entirely. Malik came by every few days, never announced himself, sometimes in a suit, sometimes in work clothes, always listening more than talking. One afternoon, while we were fixing a fence post together, I finally asked the question I'd been holding. "Why now?" I said. "You could have sent lawyers. You didn't have to come yourself." He wiped sweat from his forehead, thought for a moment. "I saw the parcel number," he said. "Didn't recognize the name at first, but the land size, the creek bend, it stuck. I checked the address." He paused. "I kept your name written down for years," he said, "folded in my wallet. I never knew if I'd need it. I just knew I didn't want to forget." I nodded, didn't trust my voice. The third week, the county froze all enforcement actions tied to similar properties. The fourth week, formal charges were filed: fraud, abuse of authority, conspiracy. People in town started stopping by. Some brought food, some brought apologies they didn't quite say out loud, some just stood at the fence, unsure what to do with their guilt. I accepted what felt honest, ignored the rest. Malik brought in new equipment, not flashy, just reliable, set up irrigation that didn't waste water, hired workers from town. Men who had once looked the other way now worked the soil carefully, like they were trying to make amends without words. The land changed. Not overnight, but steadily. One evening, Malik sat across from me on the porch, the same porch where a hungry boy once asked for food. "I set up a trust," he said. "Land preservation. Your name stays on the deed. No one can force a sale. Ever." I frowned. "What's it cost me?" "Nothing," he said. "No signatures, no conditions." I studied him. "Nothing's ever free." He smiled slightly. "This isn't free. It's paid for." After that, he checked the fences himself once a month, walked the rows, learned the names of plants again, asked questions like he was the student now. One morning, I found him standing at the edge of the field, just watching the soil turn under a new plow. "You kept your word," I said. He shook his head. "I showed up late." "You showed up when it counted." He didn't argue. That night, for the first time in years, I went inside before dark, didn't listen for engines, didn't lock the door right away. The land was quiet. Not the lonely kind, the safe kind.
People in town started saying Malik's name out loud, not like a rumor anymore, like a fact. They learned he wasn't just a businessman. He was the one backing half the regional development projects that suddenly paused, the one whose signature decided whether contracts lived or died, the one who sat in rooms where people like our county inspectors were never invited. But that wasn't the story Malik told. One afternoon, while we were repairing the old shed door, I asked him how he'd done it, how a boy who once asked for food at my door ended up with that kind of reach. He didn't answer right away. "Luck," he said finally. I waited. He sighed. "I slept in my car my first year of college," he said. "Worked nights, studied days, ate once when I could. I remembered what hunger felt like. I didn't want to ever feel it again." He paused, tightening a bolt too hard, and I didn't want anyone else to feel it either. He told me about deals he walked away from, fast money, dirty money, the kind that comes with silence attached. He said no more times than yes, and every no cost him something. "But I kept hearing your voice," he said, "not the words, the way you said them. Life keeps better records than money." That line followed him. The town tried to make it right in awkward ways. Invitations to church events, community meetings that suddenly wanted his opinion. People who once crossed the street to avoid me now waved too hard. Malik didn't soak it in. He stayed focused. He funded repairs for 3 other properties hit by the same scheme, quietly, no press, just checks and contracts that protected people instead of trapping them. The county inspector resigned before charges landed. The deputy testified. The system cracked, not all the way, but enough to let light in. One evening, Malik offered again. "You could come stay with me," he said, "full time." I shook my head. This land raised me too. He smiled. I figured. So he adjusted, built a small place on the edge of the property, not for himself, for later, for when walking got harder, for when winters felt longer. We stood together at the fence one morning, watching workers plant cover crops. I used to think success meant leaving, he said. Turns out it meant coming back. I nodded. Most people don't. He looked out over the land, quiet. I was angry for a long time, he said. Not at you, at the world, at how easy it was for people to look away. And now, I asked, now I know what to do with it. The town didn't change overnight. Towns rarely do. But something shifted. People remembered, and some of them started choosing better. Malik never claimed credit, never corrected anyone who got the story wrong. He just kept showing up. And every time he did, I saw flashes of that boy again. Not hungry now, but still careful, still listening, still keeping track.
The seasons rolled by slower than I ever remembered. The farm felt different now, lighter. Not because the work was easier, but because the weight of fear had lifted. Malik was here more than he wasn't. He'd walk the rows in the morning, boots scuffing dirt, hands deep in the soil. Sometimes he'd talk quietly, as if the plants themselves were listening. Other times he just stood and watched. He never left me to wonder whether he'd disappear again. He stayed. One crisp autumn morning, I found him leaning on the old fence post, staring at the fields that had once seemed too much for me alone. "You kept your word," I said. "I only showed up late," he said with a half smile, eyes tracing the horizon, "but I never forgot." We stood in silence, the kind that carries years instead of seconds. I pressed my palms together, feeling the pulse of the land beneath my fingers. Life had a rhythm, and finally it was ours again. Over the following months, Malik made sure the farm was protected for good. He created a trust, no strings, no conditions, just care. Modern equipment arrived quietly, irrigation systems installed, and a small crew of locals hired to help. The farm didn't become flashy or showy. It became unshakable, a home for generations. Neighbors came by sometimes. A few apologized. A few brought gifts of food or produce. I accepted what felt honest and left the rest. It wasn't about gratitude or recognition anymore. It was about the right thing finally being done. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Malik and I sat on the porch watching the sky turn gold. He leaned back, boots dusty, and just breathed. "You did all of this because of me?" I asked. "No," he said, "because of what you taught me, about showing up even when no one else does." I laughed softly. Never thought a boy asking for beans and cornbread would come back like this. He looked at me, eyes steady, and never forget, I promised. It just took 21 years to keep it. The farm, the land, the quiet, it all felt like a reward, but it wasn't. The real reward was the understanding that small acts of kindness ripple out farther than we can imagine. And that's the story. A boy who came hungry and broke eventually grew into a man who could protect what mattered most. A man who remembered the debt of gratitude, even decades later. And a farm that breathed easy again because someone cared enough to act when it mattered. If this story moved you, remember this. One act of kindness can change a life, and sometimes it comes back when you least expect it. Hit subscribe for more stories of courage, care, and the quiet power of human connection. Share this with someone who needs it today, and always choose kindness.